In the dark years of World War II, Britain didn't just fight battles, it fought for information. One of its strangest schemes was Operation Mincemeat, a deception built on a body, a file, and a single brilliant assumption: the enemy would believe what felt real. The plan targeted Nazi Germany's intelligence service, the Abwehr, and it was created for a reason that felt immediate. Allied commanders were preparing for an invasion somewhere in the Mediterranean, and Germans were watching every clue. If the Germans guessed wrong, troops would move to protect the wrong beaches. If they guessed right, the invasion could stall in blood. MI6 and MI5 officers needed an error they could manufacture. At the heart of the operation were Ewan Montagu and Charles Cholmondeley, clever British minds working in the shadows. Their job was to turn paperwork into a weapon, using the enemy's habits against him. They began with the reality of bodies available after the war's violence. A sailor's body was chosen, then reworked, its name replaced, its uniform staged, its pockets filled with details that would survive scrutiny. Montagu's team asked a shocking question. What if the best source wasn't a spy, but a dead man with believable possessions? A corpse cannot lie, and yet it can carry an entire story. The man was dressed as Major William Martin, an officer with papers suggesting he belonged deep in the coming battle. Letters, schedules, and personal effects were arranged so that any finder would feel the brush of authentic life. Crucially, the documentary evidence was hidden in a way that could cross the sea, a sealed container protected from water and time. The intention was simple: make the papers arrive intact, soaked but readable. In the spring of 1943, British planners aimed the drop point near the Spanish coast. Spain was neutral, but its officials worked slowly, and information traveled through the maze of borders. The corpse would be carried by submarine, delivered quietly, and then left to the shoreline. The plan relied on a grim chain reaction: discovery, curiosity, documentation, and finally, German interception. When the operation moved into execution, the weather and timing mattered as much as the file itself. A delay could ruin the illusion, because the Germans expected intelligence to match the rhythm of the war. British crews guarded the body like a secret engine, handling it with care and sealing it for the voyage. At sea, the difference between success and failure was measured in small procedures. The drop was not dramatic. No explosions, no uniforms firing, just a transfer from boat to water and a careful release that looked accidental from the outside. On the Spanish shoreline, fishermen later found the body. Local authorities examined the papers and, following their own channels, passed the material upward toward German intelligence. Meanwhile, in Germany, Abwehr analysts studied the documents with the confidence of trained readers. The name, the handwriting style, the military references, everything fit the patterns they expected from a real officer. They concluded that an Allied landing was planned for southern Europe, not the place Britain intended to strike. The report pushed commanders to consider alternate targets and to shift resources accordingly. The intelligence was especially persuasive because it arrived through a neutral country, not a captured spy. Abwehr officers could claim the tip was independent, which made it harder to dismiss. For the Germans, the deception became a map. Rumors hardened into directives, and units began preparing for the wrong coastline, while the real invasion force practiced in secrecy. As summer 1943 approached, the pressure on the Mediterranean increased. Britain's maneuver aimed to thin defenses in Sicily, giving Allied ships and troops the breathing room to cross. When Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily, began in July, the payoff emerged. German commanders had committed attention and men elsewhere, and the timetable of conflict started to favor the Allies. To be clear, the war could not be won by trick alone. Yet the deception reduced friction at a crucial moment, limiting German ability to concentrate quickly. Operation Mincemeat also worked because of psychology. The enemy wanted certainty, and the documents offered it with bureaucratic credibility, like a file stamped by fate. Back in Britain, the planners tracked reactions through intercepted signals and reports. They watched how commanders responded, then adjusted other operations to exploit the new assumptions. After the war, the story became literature. Ewan Montagu wrote about the operation, turning wartime tradecraft into a narrative that civilians could follow. The famous title is The Man Who Never Was, and it inspired later filmmakers to bring the deception to the screen. Viewers remember the corpse, but the real hero is the planning that made it believable. Modern historians keep refining the details, debating how much each document influenced German decisions. What is clear, though, is the operation's overall impact on timing and attention. Mincemeat shows something important about intelligence work. It is not only about secrets, but about persuasion. A forged story can move armies when it matches the beliefs of the people receiving it. The operation also highlighted the use of neutral space. Spain's position created a buffer where information could be handled, delayed, and then routed to the right ears at the right moment. Look at the craft, not just the concept. Every layer, from container seals to document selection, was designed to survive a world where damp paper and human doubt both threatened truth. And yet it wasn't invincible. If Spanish officials had treated the papers differently, the chain would have broken. If Abwehr skepticism had been stronger, the story might have collapsed. That's why Operation Mincemeat is still studied. It proves that timing, logistics, and human psychology can turn an unthinkable idea into strategic advantage. Imagine the tension for the people waiting for results. In offices lit by dim lamps, they waited for messages, signals, and confirmations that would show whether the deception took. For a moment, the war became a puzzle with missing pieces. Then, as ships sailed and commanders reacted, the picture snapped into focus. The enemy had moved. In the end, the operation's most haunting image is simple: one ordinary life redirected into a fabricated military future. Yet it also serves as a reminder. Wars are shaped as much by imagination as by steel. If you're watching this now, remember the core lesson. Deception isn't just trickery, it's disciplined craft, built on research, consistency, and a deep understanding of what the other side wants to believe. Operation Mincemeat continues to inspire modern intelligence professionals, writers, and historians. It remains a case study in how a single document packet, seemingly small, can shift the weight of an entire campaign. So next time you hear about war, look for the stories that travel quietly. Sometimes victory begins long before the first shot, on paper, in transit, and inside a mind that refuses to doubt. Operation Mincemeat relied on one more element: the Germans' own confidence in their surveillance and their appetite for actionable intelligence. When officials saw familiar military formatting, they treated it as confirmation. Some accounts note how the story included believable personal quirks, timing of letters, references to places, and everyday items that looked handled by a real person. These touches made the deception feel lived in. The operation also shows the danger of overconfidence. Intelligence teams who rush to act on a single packet can be steered, even when other evidence suggests caution. Today, you can find the case in archives, museums, and documentaries, and it still sparks debate about ethics, accuracy, and effect. But its central mechanics remain timeless. Create credibility, route it safely, and wait for reaction. So whether you see Mincemeat as a lesson in ingenuity or a caution about manipulation, remember the result. Allied planners gained precious days. In war, those days can become lives saved. Subscribe, share, and hit the like button.